Hey folks, Rich here, South Florida Beekeeping with Rich. So today we're going to go bananas and bees, the source of much misinformation and all kinds of tall tales, but we're going to clear all that up today. So we're going to start off back with Francois Uber. Probably he was doing this around the 1780s. He lived from 1750 to 1831. He's the famous blind bee researcher. And he noted that when a bee stung you, other bees quickly drawn to the same spot to also sting you. So he had his assistant, Francois Burnes, who doesn't get nearly enough credit, but he had his assistant pull the stinger apparatus out of a bunch of bees, mush it together, and put it out in the apiary. And sure enough, bees from all the hives came boiling out and started, swirling around over there looking for whatever it was they were supposed to sting. With that observation made, that if a bee stings you, it leaves behind what he speculated was some sort of scent that caused other bees to want to sting you. Now, you have to remember and understand, this is the 1700s, the 1800s. There were no refrigerated containers bringing bananas up from South America. There was, most people in Europe, unless they had been part of the British occupation of India, probably didn't know what a banana was, didn't know what the flavor of one was, may have never seen one or tasted one or smelled one. So it was an interesting and unique smell there, but not one he could say, oh, that smells like banana, because he'd never had a banana. Okay. So, at any rate, he concluded the stinging bee marked its target with a scent that told other bees to go for the throat. But that's all his technology could do. Move forward to 1848, 1849, to the early days of organic chemistry, when they were learning that if you blend an alcohol with a carboxylic acid, you get an ester, and many of those esters smelled very pleasant and very fruity. And one of the most successful of these was Isomil alcohol and acetic acid, which made a delicious banana-like smell. That discovery was one of the hits of the Crystal Palace exhibition of 1853 in Hyde Park, London. Everybody just was gaga over this fruity smell. Okay? And that fruity smell was isoamyl acetate, which is exactly what you get. Oh, that's pure vanilla. Sorry. It's exactly what you get if you use imitation banana today. So if you're really mean and you want to take a drop of this and put it on somebody's bonnet, their veil,
don't even give anybody ideas. Stop that.
Hey, I can't help it.
Don't encourage.
Okay, at any rate, but even at that time, a lot of people, unless you've been part of the British Raj, you didn't still know what a banana was. But now we fast forward to the late 1950s, when the first gas chromatographs were a reality. And hop up to the 1962, when some young Canadian bee researchers had access to a chromatograph, and so they went back to Uber's old idea there, pulled the stingers out of a whole bunch of bees, and did all the processing they needed to do, and they put them in a gas chromatograph. And they got a big spike that they could identify as isomyl acetate. They call it IPA. And boom, the myth that you can't eat bananas and keep bees was born. Because, it was like, oh, if, it smells like bananas, then the bees are going to go at you. But here's the thing. It turns out, again, because now we have gas chromatographs, that there's more than 40 different active compounds in the worker's sting apparatus. And it turns out that IPA is an alert or attention pheromone, kind of like a drill sergeant going, 10, hut! All right, you maggots, blah, blah, blah. And then other pheromones in there tell you what kind of activity should follow, which in this case is attack and destroy, of course. But the IPA pheromone, which is in bananas, not to a great extent, but the IPA chemical that is in bananas is an attention pheromone. And at most would probably cause an increase in bumping on your veil, if anything. So, in conclusion, there is IPA in bananas, but you do not exude it in your sweat. You can eat bananas. It's not like, oh, if you're going to keep bees, you never can eat bananas again. You don't exude it in your sweat. It could be in your breath if you ate a banana and went straight into the bee yard, but if you brush your teeth first, you won't even have that little scent to go along. Your carbon dioxide in your breath is a whole lot more of a problem, and it's there whether you're going to do anything or not. It's more literally, the IPA from the banana is not nearly as important in your breath as the IPA from the liquor store if you drank that before you went out to keep your bees, because the bees don't like the scent of alcohol and beer on your breath at all either. But now we're going to get on to my latest hero, Katharina Davitt. I don't know if you coming up real close on this might make it possible for them to scan that when they're watching this on YouTube or not.
Probably.
If it does, great. I'm holding it there. And you see her website below.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Now tell us why.
Okay. I wanted to make sure this stayed in frame for a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
Because, wow, she is my hero now. Katharina Davitt is a master beekeeper. She's gotten her master beekeeper out of the University of Montana. I don't want to spend too much time on a lot of rehashes here. She had spent time in Africa and had noted in her time there that African beekeepers routinely feed mashed bananas to their bee colonies. And when asked why, they told her that it's because they make more brood that way. And it was kind of an anecdotal thing. So fast forward to she's doing her master's at master beekeeper, not master academically, her master beekeeper there. And she told her supervisors that she wanted to pursue this line of inquiry. And they wouldn't let her. They said, no, it's just anecdotal. There's nothing to it, we're sure. So, pick something else. Well, she persevered and she did some research and she found out that there were studies that had been done in Africa that actually quantified some of this stuff. And she took that back to her mentors and they said, well, okay, we'll let you do it. But either you knock it out of the park or you fail on this one, because you have to make a B+ or better to pass and get your master beekeeper. And A-, B+ is what people normally got. A solid A would be if you actually taught them something new. Well, she did a fantastic job of a whole bunch of research studies on bananas and bees. And the outcomes are just fantastic. Bananas are not complete nutrition for bees. Don't make that mistake. Bananas are very low in amino acids, which is what you get from your pollen substitutes. Okay, you need amino acids to help build, but there is so much potassium and phosphorus and other things in bananas that it really makes a big difference. Where are my...
So they are better for bees than just feeding, for example, sugar?
Very much better. Yes, when she did this study, package her up and study. Yes, I know I wrote it down here. Okay, sorry, I did find my sheet. So she was in Africa, spent time with African beekeepers, noticeably better brood production when they fed bananas. She came to Montana, and it came time. She wanted to do that, yada, yada, yada. So to ask how this worked out, in short, in her control group, which was just fed 1-to-1 sugar water, the hive gained more weight in 30 days because honey weighs more than brood. But they found out that banana puree, you got a 10% increase in brood over the control. Puree and sugar syrup, a 12.9% increase in brood over the control. Puree and sugar syrup with a pollen patty, you got a 16.3% increase in brood. And a ripe banana with pulp and peel with 1-to-1 sugar syrup on the side, you got an 18.1% increase in brood production. That's pretty considerable. I mean, that's literally 5 frames of brood instead of 4 frames of brood when you really look at it that way.
It's almost 20%.
Almost 20% more brood production, which is what you want for spring buildup. If you brought bees out of a package or a spring nuke, you want buildup like that. The research it was just fantastic when she actually started looking into it. And the number of references that she has in here to research studies that she brought together are fantastic. I want to refer you to, and we will put this stuff all in the show notes because I'm not going to go through all of this. I want you to go back and I want you to look at her stuff. First, Beekeeping Today podcast, season 3, episode 25. That's her being interviewed for that national podcast, and she goes over all this there. Then she has done several research studies here, and we will have links to them, such as this one right here. Package Her Up Spring Study 2019. Tips and when to feed. Feed with a purpose. More is never better. Do not feed when the supers are on. Nature is providing them with all their needs. One of the things she points out here is that there are sufficient resources out there. They will ignore the bananas. They'll only go after the bananas if there's no resources out there. Can you mash the bananas up and put them outside of the hives? No, you cannot. The sugar content of a banana never exceeds 23%, and the bottom limit for what bees like is about 30%, the nectar and such, in nature. So no, they'll fly right past bananas that are outside the hive.
And all you'll do would be to attract fruit flies.
Yeah, fruit flies, small hive beetles,
ants,
whatever else, but you won't get bees there. Whereas inside, in preparation for this, one of the videos that I saw was, and she refers to this guy in her notes too, it's a beekeeper, an English beekeeper in Malaysia, in the tropics, and he goes through and he lifts up not one hive. Oh, look at this hive and what's going on. No, he goes hive after hive after hive and shows you he's got a tray of sugar, a tray of pollen substitute, and a mashed banana. And the bees are paying no attention to the pollen substitute. They're paying no attention to the sugar. They're all over the banana, hive after hive after hive. Banana peels are every bit as important as the mashed banana. They're really high in dopamine and serotonin, just a lot of potash, everything else in them. Now, in some parts of the country, at some times of the year, you could feed banana in the early fall to help. Right now, I should mention, you're going to see this on September 22nd, Friday, September 22nd. September 23rd is the fall equinox. If your bees aren't already kicking out the drones from the hive, they probably already have for the most part, but any drones that have managed to hang on there, they're going to be being kicked out in the next 3 to 5 days, guaranteed, because this is a major trigger for the bees to start going into fall. You can feed banana now because you're feeding your last bees before you start making up your winter bees. But you want to stop before too long because you don't want to be feeding them something that's going to leave a lot of ash in their gut. You're going to want them to have time to poop all this out before they go into winter quarters. Okay, so be careful of your timing there. Should you ever, how long do you feed banana? Usually not too very long at a time, not more than 4 weeks in a row at any point. The best times to feed banana are either as part of a banana pollen substitute. You can feed banana before the pollen comes out in spring. Now, here in South Florida, that literally means early January. I will guarantee you, I'll be putting bananas in my above my brood chambers by the first week of January, because the bees are already going. The bees start working about 3 weeks before the earliest pollen is available, because they know they can lay them and feed them on sugar syrup, but when they come out, they got to have more pollen for them. So they tend to get a head start on that. This will help with some of that. Behavioral observations. Some people say that if you're using the mashed banana and you open things up, there will be a little more of an alert on your bees. Other people don't observe that at all. But early spring buildup is important. Late summer, early fall, when you're in dearth, very important. And honey, it says that the honeybees start to rear winter bees before the first frost. Again, not something I would know anything about. I'm in South Florida. Other times, anytime you install a package, anytime you're producing queens, anytime with weak colonies, where to go from here. You want to reproduce this study. If somebody would reproduce this study in Florida at all, but in South Florida particularly, if you're going for your master beekeeper, reproducing this study in tropical conditions. Remember, this was done in Montana, but reproducing this study or making a variant of this study in tropical conditions would be fantastic. Don't look at me. I'm not a researcher. Look at all these references. Once she started digging into it, there within her, on her website, there are links to studies that were done by researchers all about the Cavendish banana, because these are all Cavendish bananas. All the bananas you're going to find in the store are Cavendish. Here in South Florida, I have 2 different varieties of banana back here in my backyard, neither one of which is Cavendish, both of which have a higher sugar content than Cavendish. But we don't know anything about them because it's like orphan diseases. Nobody's doing studies on bananas that have no monetary return on them. This mini banana has much more nutrition in its pulp than this does. Well, who cares? You can't get that mini banana anywhere further than down the street in your local market if they're buying from local people. And how many markets do that these days? It's mostly just you have them in your backyard for your own enjoyment. But I really want you to look at Katharina Davitt's website. I want you to look at her presentations. I'm not going to spend all this time. You would not believe the number of pages and breakdowns of the amount of phosphorus and sodium and all this other stuff.
So are we just going to talk about it, or are we going to go look at your hives?
Well, what we're going to do now, we're done with this. I'm going to talk about ripeness of bananas, and I'm going to slice the bananas, and then we're going to pause, and I'm going to suit up, light a smoker. Not suit, I'm going to put on a veil. Light a smoker, and we're going to go out to the hives, and we're going to see what they've done with the bananas that I put in there 2 days ago. Okay? So I'll see you in a little bit. Oh, no, I've got to do this part first. No? Okay, so there's 7 stages of bananas. 3 stages when they're not ripe enough, 2 stages when they're ripe and perfect for what we're going to do here, and 2 stages when they're too ripe. Well, you know how it is down here. You go to the store and either all the bananas are too green or they're almost rotten. Well, this was the best I could do yesterday. All of these bananas are in stage 2 to stage 3, not ripe enough. Okay? apparently it's freckling that counts. I didn't know it was called freckling until I started doing this research. But when you start getting the natural freckles on the side, you're into the 2 stages of ripeness that are best. The best we can do today is this one, which was on the outside of that bunch, which was kind of bruised up a little bit. So this isn't freckling, it's just light bruising, but we'll work with what we have. So the way they prepare the bananas for doing this sort of thing, slice it lengthwise, slice it like this. I learned so much about bananas here. I had no idea that the skin gets thinner and thinner as the material in it goes into the banana itself. And this is part of the reason why the bananas get an increase in sugar in them as they get to be perfectly ripe. So these aren't quite ripe enough, but they're what we got, so they're what we're going to use. So turn off the camera now, dear, and we will go out to the bee yard.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Okay, back again. Okay, so I didn't just start this. I got bananas last week. I diced them up. I put them in the hives, came out, checked them 2 days later. No trace left. So hopefully yesterday or the day before yesterday, I fed all the hives. So hopefully they're in a sweeter mood today. So there's not a banana between here and here. There's a banana between here and here. So we're just going to open it up to that point and see if we should have any banana visible. I'm sorry, but from where my wife stands, I will probably have to get my head in the way. Let's take this off just to make it easier on me. Now, like I said, you can't put banana out in the yard. It doesn't work. The first experiment I did, because I hadn't seen Katharina Davitt's stuff yet, is I mashed up banana and I put it in the feeder up here. And that worked pretty well, but not as well as it could because it had time for the edges to dry off and such. So then I read about her studies with it, and it's like, okay, the proper way to do this is definitely to go in from between the frames of the hive. So let me just get this ready and we will open this up. I guess I'll have to get on this side. Being left-handed, I have to do things in a certain way. Oh, ladies. I guess I'm being a little paranoid here, but with the possibility of a heightened alert pheromone in there, I don't want to take too many chances. Okay, so first off, let's see if there's any trace of banana. Nope, none at all. So here's how you feed banana. You drop it in there.
Face down.
Face down.
1/4.
1/4, and you mash it.
So they eat the skin?
They eat 100% of the skin. It's actually higher in nutrients, a lot of nutrients than the pulp is. And they consume the whole thing. You notice I cut the ends off. If you don't cut the ends off, that's all you'll find outside is the little brown nub from the 2 ends. But done that way, they eat the skin. You want to focus on the ground here, you'll see there is no banana out on the ground.
What do you know? Who else gets a treat today?
No, this is not about coconuts.
Was that a coconut that just fell?
That was a coconut that just went crashing down. I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts. But today it's yes, we have no bananas. We have no bananas today. Now, in a few years, we might have to redo a lot of that research because, again, not a trace of banana.
But I want to look underneath. Did it get mashed underneath?
Oh, well, no. That would be on the frames, dear.
Yeah, but it
no, but the skin would prevent that.
Yeah.
From happening.
Well, there's no mashing either.
That's why the technique is face down, skin on top. That way they don't get it caught up in there.
And just mash it down with the hive tool.
Just mash it down with the hive tool.
I don't think that could be any easier.
No, and the benefit is incredible. The benefit is just incredible. Oops. Well, like I said, I was feeding the bees yesterday. I'm glad you weren't looking for the spoon last night.
We'll have a talk about that later.
Yeah, probably. If I know you.
You may need to go to the thrift store and get your own
utensils. I have. I just never take the time to go grab them. Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay. In each case, I put it, believe it or not.
I'm over here.
Okay.
Where do you want me to be?
Well, I'm just trying to see which one we're going to look in. We have 2 pieces here and we have 3 hives. So who's going to get it?
Do they all have it?
Yeah. Now, this is normally my testiest hive. Like I said, I fed them yesterday. But if anybody was going to be a little more testy because they had a little too much pheromone running around, it would be this one. So let's start with this one. Well, let's see. Okay, so the queen excluder's over there, so this is a brood chamber here. So pretty sure I didn't put it just underneath this, but let's just make sure. Well, if I did, there's no...
I was going to say, if it disappears, how would you know? You got to make notes on these things.
I got to tell you, it's... well, I made careful notes on that one because I put it 2 down rather than just underneath here. The other one, all of these, I remember now. I just made sure that I kept it away from the entrance hole here. I did put it just underneath the feeders. So, okay, we got better light here. We have very calm bees. They're not even lining up in rows to look at me or anything.
No, but I'm sort of standing in front of the entrance almost, which is a no-no.
Not terribly.
But they're fine.
Yeah, they eat every bit of that skin.
And we are both wearing shorts, by the way. Just so you know. Because it's hot.
It's South Florida. It's hot.
It's always hot.
Yeah. On the other day when I was doing this, I did put on a jacket, but I was still wearing shorts.
Yeah. Well, it's usually about 90 degrees.
Let's just go for number 3. I thought number 3 was weak here a while back. I was just watching the front entrance. And then I went in to do a deeper check.
How much activity do they have? Yeah.
What I found out was that
low.
This box right here, which is a brood chamber, 8 frames side to side, all capped brood. They were just getting ready to have a party, as it were. Let's grab this. Yeah. They're on their sugar, but they're not, desperate on the sugar, which is good.
Got a stupid question for you.
Uh-huh.
So you have an odd number of hives. You have an even number of bananas. If you want to feed them all, how long can you leave the cut up portions of banana? I mean, can you put them in the fridge wrapped up in cellophane or something and feed them the next day or 2 days later?
Well, that's not a beekeeping question. That's a
How long do bananas last question.
how long bananas last in the fridge. Bananas don't last well in the fridge at all.
Well, the skin turns black, but does that have any bearing
Sweetheart,
on?
the answer to your question here is that if I have an odd piece left over, I just mash it on whatever I consider the weakest hive.
You'd have, well, if you have
But
5 hives
but
and
by the way, this
you'd have
is
3 pieces left over. Do you
yeah,
just eat them?
good,
Okay, it's a valid
but
question.
I think I would just use them all. This is a normal dose for feeding, by the way. 1/4 banana is about 100 grams. I didn't get out the scale and weigh it, but a Cavendish banana sliced in quarters should be somewhere around 100 grams. And that is your weekly dose of feed, not daily dose of feed. So, you're talking about 1 banana a month per hive. Don't think it's going to break you.
Wasn't anticipating that.
Now, look, see there,
Ah, skin.
we have some skin. Bees are still eating it.
They are. Why you wouldn't remove it then, right?
No, well, you probably should, but I'm not going to because I'm just fascinated to see what happens.
Do you have a brood feeder? Do you have a rapid feeder on that?
Yeah.
Isn't that right under the rapid feeder hole?
No, not quite.
Okay.
But I'll slide it a little bit just to make sure. Yeah, I wish I could just use it in the rapid feeder just as well. I mean, it's possible. I have not taken a quartered banana and put it in the rapid feeder. I could, I just haven't. So
But you also have damp sugar in the rapid feeder.
just because I have them full of damp sugar at the moment.
Yeah.
So.
And they're still taking the banana, and they're still taking the damp sugar as well.
Yeah, but as you can see, they're not taking it too much, which means that these guys may have found themselves a nice source somewhere, and they're more interested in that source than they are in any supplemental feed I'm giving them right now. So, bee's going to do what bee's going to do.
Still, I think it's interesting to give us a nutritional supplement that's separate from, your regular white sugar.
White sugar does its thing, and pollen patties do their thing, and there are several formulations out there. If you go to her website and you look at her presentation, and if you click on the link she provides you to some of these other things, you will learn an awful lot. A, about Cavendish bananas, more than you may want to know, but B, proper ways of processing these things. For instance, you take 100 grams of Cavendish banana, you put it in 1 liter of water, and you puree it. And then you run that through a piece of cheesecloth to take out some of the solids. You add that to 100 grams of sugar, and then you stir that together, and you bring it up, add enough water to make it back up to 1 liter again. And that is their standard feeding method that they were using on one of these studies. And it had a very good effect. And that's also, I think, probably the best preparation to use as a starting point to make a pollen patty with banana in it. Now, one thing I'm going to do next time I feed these bees is I'm going to take a couple of bananas and I'm going to mash them up real good, and I'm going to add them to the sugar and stir that around. I am not completely sure what success rate that's going to have, because once you expose all that area to oxidation, I'm not sure how quickly the bees would have to eat it before they didn't have any interest in it anymore. Because bees, like if you say there's 7 stages of ripeness and overripeness on bananas, they have very little interest in stages 6 and 7. Once it starts going soft, they have no more interest in it than you and I do. So you kind of keep it in the sweet spot there. These bananas are like a day before that sweet spot would really be, but I'll come back out and see how it goes. There's an awful lot I can do just as a backyard beekeeper in working out different formulations and ways of using the banana. But the main thing here is banana good. Bananas are good. They provide a tremendous amount of nutrition. They do not provide amino acids, which is protein, what bees would use to make protein, but they do provide an awful lot of extra nutrition, and they provide a lot more weight and health for the bees that are coming on. They have spring, dearth, and fall value to using them, and endless ways that you can formulate different feeding techniques with them. We're just going to have to see what works and doesn't work. And I'm hoping that somebody sees this and decides to do more, that has the ability and the interest to do more studies here in the tropics on this, because it came from the tropics to start with. Bye-bye, everybody. That's it for today.